What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be joined by Andy Kamenetzky of Locked On Lakers, as there are questions regarding Frank Vogel's job security, the recent benching of Russell Westbrook. How do the Lakers move forward from this point? But first, a quick message from our friends over at Built Bar, because look, it is the new year. So that means New Year's resolutions, right? If yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than a candy bar. They've got so many amazing flavors to choose from: strawberry, mint brownie, peanut butter, cookies and cream, coconut brownie chunk. You can't go wrong with a single flavor on their menu. Built Bar makes it easier to stick to your New Year's resolution because it tastes so good, you're going to want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or gritty or just the consistency is a little bit off, you can check out Built Bar. Every single bar, low cal, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. You can check them out. Just go to built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and you'll get 15% off your very next order of the best tasting protein bars on the market. Again, that's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. Joining us now is Andy Kamenetzky of Locked On Lakers, one half of Locked On Lakers, joining us here on Locked On NBA, because there are questions looming over Frank Vogel's job security. We have Russell Westbrook getting benched at the end of games. There is so much going on with this Lakers team. Andy, I guess we got to start with just the biggest thing that's happened in the last week for the Lakers. I mean, Russell Westbrook getting benched at the end of a game. You have Frank Vogel coming out after the game saying, I went with the five guys who I thought were going to win us the game. I mean, if you're the Lakers, how do you even move past that and work past that? I know they came out Friday and they had, Russ had another quality outing after that, but this is kind of a big thing to have to move past.
Yeah, I mean, there's the dynamics of a coach like Frank Vogel, who is seen, I think, rather accurately as on kind of a game-to-game basis and being evaluated as this thing goes, and he does not have a ton of job security. And if the front office truly wanted to make you feel like Frank Vogel was along for this ride for the foreseeable future, they would have given him not what I refer to as a fake extension, which was a one-year deal, basically making him a lame duck coach next year as opposed to this year. And Russ is a very prideful, headstrong guy. To his credit, he has played well in the two games since that benching. He has conceded that he was mad about it, but he said more mad that they lost the game. And he seems like he is looking to try to move past this professionally. I don't think this was Frank Vogel taking a shot at Russell Westbrook per se, even though Westbrook did not play well in this game. And, there were defensive breakdowns that I think just put Vogel over the edge. And I think it was also indicative of Vogel recognizing that he was coaching for his job. But, when he said, I went with the players that I thought could win the game, that wasn't, to me, so much a shot at Russ as it was the front office. It was basically him saying, this is what you saddled me with. This is the roster you guys reconstructed that plays against all of my strengths. And then we've had all these different issues going, is what I'm rolling with. And, he apparently had the carte blanche to do whatever he wanted, but I still think it may have been a middle finger to the front office at the same time. These are not mutually exclusive things.
So if you're trying to allocate some of the frustrations for Lakers fans or just NBA fans who are watching this Laker team struggle this season, I feel like you've got kind of three areas that you could maybe point towards, and you've got
just three.
Well, maybe I'm shortchanging them a little bit, but
who the hell taught you how to do math, Jackson?
I feel like ultimately, right, you've got people wanting to point the fingers at Frank Vogel. You've got people trying to blame Russell Westbrook, and you can look at the front office and just the overall construction of this Lakers team. But ultimately, I feel like anybody who's trying to make it just out to be a black and white thing, like it's just this one person or this one issue, that's kind of where you lose some of the nuance, because it just seems like it's just this mountain of different things that are all coalescing together, causing the issues for the Lakers this season, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be difficult to pin it on one single thing. I mean, you can look at some factors and say they're bigger issue than others. Like, the construction of this roster, even under the best of circumstances, which the Lakers have not even remotely experienced because of all the injuries to Anthony Davis, to LeBron James, all the guys in and out of COVID protocols. These circumstances have been very difficult to navigate, even if everybody had been whole. But that being said, this was a very oddly constructed roster. And, when they traded for Russell Westbrook. They lost a lot of their shooting. And some of their more proven shooting with defensive players. They lost guys who knew the system that they were running. They lost a lot of familiarity and continuity. And this is not a roster that Frank Vogel would look to construct for himself. I don't think Frank Vogel's been completely blameless in all of this. He's been, I think, it took him too long to really come to Jesus with the idea of they have to play smaller, even acknowledging some of the absences that made it difficult at times to go as small as you would want to, most notably Anthony Davis not being there. There's a lot of playing bigger that is just Frank Vogel's worldview and aesthetic with basketball that it did help win him a championship and the Lakers 2 years ago. But this is a very different roster. But the front office has to take a lot of blame for the construction of this and just how much turnover there's been. You have to point a finger at LeBron because by all accounts, he and Anthony Davis, who also deserves a finger, both wanted the Russell Westbrook trade. Russ has been at times, I think, better than given credit for, but he's gone through some extremely rough patches. And I'm sure you know this, Jackson, because you covered him with the Rockets. Russ's mistakes are loud. They are loud as hell, and they stand out a lot, even sometimes more than mistakes that I think if you went back and watched the tape are bigger than the ones he made.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, it's one of those situations where I do think there's been maybe an unfair amount of criticism thrown towards Russ this season. And you walk away thinking, unfortunately, if you are the Lakers and you're looking at their supposed big three in LeBron, AD, and Russ, one of those big three is the expendable one. And that's, I guess, the biggest question looming for this Lakers team is if they are not, as presently constructed, a title contender, then what needs to happen for them to get to that point? And moving Russ seems to be the only feasible potential option other than, a potential, on the fringe, moving, trading of deals here and there, Talen Horton-Tucker, potentially trying to get a team interested in him somewhere. Other than that, like, you're not going to make a major shakeup to this roster unless you find a taker for Russell Westbrook. Am I wrong?
Well, I don't think you're wrong because the Lakers' assets list pretty much begins and ends with Talen Horton-Tucker. Kendrick Nunn is the only other salary they have of note that isn't either, one of the big three making a max or a bunch of minimum guys. And, he hasn't played this whole season. I would disagree, though, with the idea of Russ being expendable because that would mean that he would be easy to send somewhere. In reality, he's not expendable at all. You have to be able to do something. And, the deals really aren't there. I'm sure you guys are hearing a lot about the supposed Westbrook for Wall rumors. I don't think that makes much sense for the Lakers. I definitely would not do it if I were them. If they have to include a first round pick to make it happen, that would be insane. That would be malpractice for the Lakers to do. I don't even know how much a Wall for Westbrook deal straight up with nothing else attached necessarily helps the Lakers. And I would need to see evidence that John Wall can, physically play basketball and do some things. And, I think it'd be helpful if Houston could actually figure out a way to get him on the court, but, or find the role that he agrees on, all this different stuff. But if that's the move, Wall versus Westbrook, I'll stick with what they have right now and see what you can do in the offseason or whatever. But I wouldn't make that move right now. I don't think it helps make them any better, particularly if you got to include a first round pick.
Realistic, serious. So I find it interesting just because, you mentioned how I think at this point, it's kind of the distinction between I guess kind of like the ceiling of Russ, you could argue is drastically higher than any potential ceiling that John Wall has at this point in his career. But even based on the limited action that we got to see out of John Wall last season with the Houston Rockets, I think he showed that he's still got, enough left in the tank to help a team. And I've argued before on Locked On Rockets that if John Wall wasn't making the $44 million that he's making, teams would be, if he was making $20 million, teams would be chomping at the bit to trade for him because he's very clearly still an NBA caliber player that can help a team, be a push for a playoff team. It's just that large contract, which is why so many people have equated Russ and Wall because they make such a similar amount of money.
Well, they've been literally traded for each other.
There we go. And before, right? It's happened before. So we're potentially staring down they're part two.
They're kind of like a reverse package deal, so to speak. But I also, like I said, I need to see evidence that John Wall is healthy and that he can stay on the court because, I mean, regardless of whether or not you think that he could help the Lakers right now more than Russell Westbrook could, I need to make sure that he's going to be there the entire time. Because if nothing else, I know Russ is going to be available. He's been available this whole season. You know, he's had more injury concerns, and he doesn't have the athleticism that he used to, but he's been, I think, generally more available than John Wall. And this is such a top-heavy team as it is. They cannot. I don't care how bad you think Russ has been this season. They are not in a place where addition is subtract. I mean, or subtraction is addition with Russ. They don't have the talent to get by with that.
With that, I need to know, Andy, what's the latest on Anthony Davis? He's already missed a significant chunk of time. When can we expect him back in the Lakers rotation?
It seems like it's going to be close. There had been some hope that he was going to play Sunday versus Miami. He was a game time decision. They ultimately deemed that he wasn't there yet. But the Lakers tend to play this stuff extremely close to the vest. Like Frank Vogel treats just releasing information about the starting lineup like it was information that the Pentagon would protect. So he wouldn't even allow for the idea, and I think the organization would not allow for the idea of letting you think Davis could be back anytime soon if they weren't close. And he's been ramping up more activity. I imagine it's going to be sometime this coming week. I don't have that firm. I don't know this for sure. It just seems like, excuse me, that's the signs where it's going, as opposed to, say, Kendrick Nunn, where we just really have no idea, and he's actually taken a setback in his ramp-ups.
Well, whether or not Frank Vogel, maintains his position as the Lakers head coach, what happens with Russell Westbrook down the line, you're going to have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Lakers. Andy, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.